What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the PONDCast. My name is Justin Skaggs, and this is being brought to you by West WaterGardens, websonline.com. A couple weeks back, we had Scott Warrick. He is the owner of West Coast WaterGardens, and we kind of got to talking after the podcast, and he started telling me a little bit about these nightmare scenarios that he runs into running a pond company. And I thought, you know, talking to somebody who does this day in and day out and sees hundreds of ponds a year, you know, what's the thing that gets under his skin? What's the thing that he sees that he identifies as the most common issue with ponds? That's got to be beneficial for someone who only has to deal with one pond, like me, and more likely than not, just like you. So I had him come in to his office. We patched him in all the way from the other coast. Let's get into some nightmare scenarios with Scott Warrick. Today on the PONDCast, we have Scott back again from West Coast WaterGardens, and the subject matter today, Scott, is nightmare scenarios. So I actually have no idea what you brought to the table. I just asked to hear some of the worst case situations you find yourself in dealing in the pond industry. So let's hear it, man. What do you got?
I think as far as the nightmare scenario that I've encountered, the biggest one on a recurring basis out here would hinge around the concept of a koi pond versus a water garden. I think, first of all, traditionally, a lot of times those liner ponds that traditionally didn't have pressurized filters that you can backwash, like pool-style bead filters and things.
Right.
They typically don't work out well in the long term for koi. Traditionally, they didn't even have UV clarifiers attached to them, so it didn't take long, particularly with koi in there, for it to turn into a big bowl of split pea soup. But right. Yeah, it wasn't generally considered within the budget of that style of installation. So a lot of people, I mean, that's their basic awareness of what, you know, a pond is, and those are sold as koi ponds rather erroneously. So a lot of times, you know, when someone says they have a koi pond, they want me to come check it out. I have no idea. It could be anything from like a mud puddle to like, you know, a lake or a swimming pool that's been converted. It runs the full spectrum. But more often than not, the big concern is seeing things that don't have the appropriate, like the suitable equipment. And clients that frankly aren't willing to spend that. They either had no awareness of the components that are required, to keep it ecologically balanced and looking good, and you know, the fish healthy and safe, or just simply not willing to spend the money. So. Oh
man, so you show up like, you know, probably after it's already turned into a toxic little waste dump, huh?
A lot of times, yeah. They'll spend, what's that market target price, like $3,000 to $5,000 for one of those liner ponds, which look great, as seen on TV, until they don't. And, yeah. Then, you know, I get a call, you know, and they think it's a botched installation, and I'm like, no, it's not a botched installation. It's just, number one, it's not really suitable for koi. It doesn't have like a bottom drain that's connected to a filtration system, and it doesn't have a filtration system which is either large enough or one that you can purge by backwashing routinely, so that you can keep, at a smaller size that's more easily contained. And so,
what do you suggest to these folks at this point?
I'm not
pull the koi out or what?
I suggest minimally, if they're going to try to hold on to the koi, upgrading the filtration system, which no one ever wants to hear after you've already. Here's a common thing that'll happen. There'll be like a sand filter, which is an archaic technology with ponds. It's not efficient. It, you know, requires more amperage to drive the pumps because of the density of sand. The sand has to be changed out each year. It's just not cost effective or efficient in any manner. So using a bead type filter instead is always the way to go. But if they brought a contractor in who only has peripheral awareness, or no awareness of ponds, but peripheral awareness of pools, you're going to end up seeing, like a pretty energy inefficient pump, generally speaking, that's really not designed to run continuously, and at best a sand filter. And then I have to tell them, I'm like, listen, if you really want to do this right, we need to scrap all that equipment you just bought and and upgrade. And
yeah, you're like everyone's least favorite guest at that point, aren't you?
Until they turn it around, and once they have their confidence,
right. Yeah.
Sometimes invited to their their parties and others. So it's it's there's a little bit of a learning curve that for them, and and so it's just about how much they're willing to commit to making the situation right. But I tell them I'm not a magician, so I'm more of a tactician. So if you follow my advice, and we can turn this thing around. And so that's a perpetual challenge. A lot of times, clients are disinclined to listen.
Sure.
To the sort of the cardinal advice as far as the quantity of fish to have and in particular square feet or cubic feet.
Well, it's like anything else, and we all get to that point. Most of us eventually learn that it's a product of talking to an expert and then following up with your own research and then applying, cross-referencing your research to what that expert said, which the research is super fast once they tell you exactly what to look for, and then finding out whether or not that person is someone you can base your confidence in. But I mean, that's a very adult approach to contracting anything, whether you're getting a house built, a floor laid, or your car worked on, right? So it's interesting that, and I talk to a lot of contractors, a lot of pond artists, and it's a similar story. Everyone thinks every shoe salesman's going to tell you need a new pair of shoes, right? Every cobbler says you need a new soles put in, but it does get to the point where if someone's coming through talking to their landscape guy, and their landscape guy knows another guy. I've also heard this. I mean, sometimes the guy who put in the pond never even really knew those people wanted to put koi in it, but there was just an assumption of, why wouldn't I be able to put koi in it? You made me a pond.
Yeah, that happens too. I think one of the biggest challenges is when you don't listen to the advice in terms of like stocking it correctly,
right,
and taking a minimalist approach, and then you have subpar equipment. When we have heat waves out here, and on account of our third world infrastructure, we have these infamous rolling blackouts that occur, and it's just a recipe for disaster because it happens during the hottest time of the year.
Right.
If you don't have a backup generator, like your electric's down, it's gonna have really dismal results very quickly. And so that alone is a substantial reason to understock, if anything, if in question. And so to have subpar equipment in an overstocked pond, it's really a potential recipe for disaster when it goes wrong. It goes wrong in a big way. And so
that is your number one nightmare scenario that you run into on the most common basis. It's understocked, overstocked ponds, or simply just not having the pond built appropriately for the fish that you as the consumer and the customer actually want to harbor in your property. And you're going to get a toxic waste dump. I've seen it myself, and that actually rings true through a lot of contractors. So let me ask you this: can we have you back and talk about another nightmare scenario down the road?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, Scott, where can they find you?
Easiest way to find me is my website, westcoastwatergardens.com.
All right, and obviously that's for anyone in the LA area. Unfortunately, our friends out in Colorado, they're not going to be able to use you. But the other thing is if anyone out there has any nightmare scenario, it'd be interesting to hear their version of that. Somewhere like in Denver or in Vermont, because they don't live in a place that's 100 degrees every day. So that might be a little bit different. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. That's a pretty general thing. Scott promised me a story that would really blow my wig back the next time he's on. So in the next couple weeks, we'll have Scott back. He's got another nightmare story that apparently is very West Coast centric. I don't know what it is, but we'll find out together. Till next time, take care and enjoy your pond.